Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inquisitive Finance. I am your host, Rafael Negron, and today we're going to continue off from where we left off yesterday. So, a new series that I'm working on is sort of talking about the responsibilities and money mindset that someone might adopt at different income brackets. Yesterday, we talked about one that is probably the most popular, as we saw that median income in the United States sits at around 39,000. So, that income bracket from yesterday, under 60,000, we talked some of the responsibilities and money mindsets that those individuals are thinking about. And today we're going to take it one step further to 60,000 to 120,000. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I think the first thing I want to talk about, or the first thing that I want to learn just for myself, because the whole point of this channel is I'm learning alongside you, right? You might see a new rebranding here yet again. If you've been following me, I'm trying out a lot of different things, really trying to find my niche. This is Inquisitive Finance, where we are constantly learning new things, and I just want to take you along the journey with me. So let's try here, and let's see if we can find out how or what percentage of people in the United States are making between 60K and 120K, okay? I think this would be kind of a cool statistic to know here. So it says here, based on data from the US Census Bureau for 2023, approximately 27.8 of households in the United States had an annual income between 60,000 and 120,000. It says the breakdown is as follows. 15% of household, 15.7% of households rather, earn between 50,000 and 74,999. Let me zoom in here a little bit, just make sure everything is good. So just looking at my screen here, I got OBS on the side. If you're familiar with the streaming software, I'm using it just for recording, but it's been phenomenal. 12.1% of households earn between $75,000 and $99,999, and 17% of households earn between $100,000 and $149,999. The question asks for the range of 60,000 to 120,000. By combining the data, we get a portion of 50K to 74,999 bracket, the entire 75 to 999 bracket, and a portion of the 100K to 149,999 bracket. I think that's way too much information. It seems like the 27.8 figure is really the sweet spot there. And you can imagine the more that we go in these videos, right, the more we're going to be, let's say, decreasing that percentage, because the higher the income bracket, the less amount of people are able to get it. So it's kind of interesting to find out what are these people doing when they reach these income brackets, and what type of responsibilities and money mindsets do they have. So let's think about this. In this stage, this is stage 2. It's considered your mid-career and growth phase. So around 60K to 120K. Let's talk about some of the responsibilities. Responsibility number 1, you're balancing multiple priorities. You're saving, you're investing, you're possibly supporting a family or a mortgage. So here's a very interesting thing. Yesterday, we talked about very, let's say, basic ways of saving, right? You can look at things like my budgeting video I showed off yesterday. Again, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, I did make this budgeting video which walks you through some simple categories to start saving from. So that's something that someone in that first income bracket might be thinking about. The second one, investing, maybe in the lower, 60K and under, you're not thinking about it, but we did see, using that compound interest calculator from the Money Guys, how that $100 a month can really take you so far. I mean, we're talking about $500,000 by the time you retire, and it's just $100 a month. And even if you take it to $50 a month, you're looking at about $250,000 at time of retirement by just contributing $50 a month. I mean, that's like the cost of almost anything, right? There is definitely something in your budget you can probably figure out how to make work for that $50. But in this stage, in 60K to 120K, I think I want to find another. Let's see if we can find another point of data here. I know sometimes Google has like the Ask AI. I want to dive deeper into AI mode, and I want to ask, what are the average ages of people in this income bracket? Okay, let's see what this has to say. I love the AI conversation, like ChatGPT, or this is what, Gemini. Being able to talk to these, especially while making content like this, just allows for me to be very fluid with data I'm looking up, and allows it for just to be a lot more conversational. So I think that's definitely a lot of fun. So let's see, it says there is no single average age for people in 60K to 120 income bracket, as this range is broad and includes people at different stages of their careers. However, data on median income by age, let me zoom in more here, reveals that many adults in their prime earning years fall within or near this range. So it says ages 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64. So let's say we can imagine maybe someone in their 30s or 40s, okay? Typically, people in their 30s or 40s, especially nowadays, I think millennials and even younger generations are starting to push back buying a home and having a family. So you can imagine that people in this income bracket, this 60K to 120K, are the type of people that are now starting to think about things like a mortgage, supporting a family. So how does your money mindset shift in these different income brackets? Because below 60K, maybe you're fresh out of college, maybe you're not really thinking about so much about having dependents, right? You're just trying to focus on yourself and build up that financial foundation. Now you're in the middle of your career, you're looking to continue growing, and by extension you're going to grow a family and maybe even buy a home. So let's get a little bit more into that, right? So taxes start to matter more and insurance coverage becomes crucial, another key responsibility of people in this income bracket. And some things I want to talk about here. So income becomes progressively taxed, meaning each new dollar is taxed at a higher rate. This is why the taxes become so important the more you make. Now, something that I didn't know for a long time, and I'm almost kind of embarrassed to say this, but if you don't know this, the way that taxes work is you're not taxed on a single, it's not like you fall in a tax bracket and the entirety of your income is taxed at that percentage. We can see here that, for example, 2024 tax rates for a single taxpayer. For a single taxpayer, the rates are 10% from anywhere from 0 to 11,000, 12% from 11.6 to 47.1, 22, 24, so on and so forth. So you can see in this little graphic right here, 0 to 11.6 is the portion taxed at 10%. 11 to 47 is the portion taxed at 12%, so on and so forth. So it's almost like every new income bracket you enter, you're getting more tax on that amount of money. So it's less money that you're able to keep and more money that you want to try to figure out how to really work for you. So just something else to think about. It's a new money mindset responsibility you have, that the more money you make, the more you will be taxed on that money. Okay, your investments at this point will likely start generating taxable events. One of my most popular videos up until this point has been the where to invest for maximum tax efficiency, Roth versus IRA versus brokerage versus HSA. So I dive into each of the different accounts that you can have, like in Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard. I talk about things like taxable 401k, Roth, HSA. It's one thing to know exactly how to pick stocks, which I would say is a losing bet. You're better off picking something like a fund. But it's also just as important to know exactly where to actually allocate those funds, which accounts would be best served for those funds, so you can reduce the tax drag. Okay, so for example, with more money, events like dividends, interest, and capital gains start to add up. So if you're in something like an actively traded fund which has a lot of turnover, you can think that in an actively traded fund, I can only imagine you have fund managers that are actively buying and selling, and each one of those sell-offs, for example, might generate taxable events like capital gains. So you will actually have to pay money on these capital gains. So how can you reduce the amount you pay by putting these funds in the appropriate accounts? I'll let you all watch that video. Highly recommend doing so. Seems like a lot of people have found benefit in it, so thank you all for watching. And if you want to see more of that content, remember you can always subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff, and let me know if you like this style of content, because I'm sure having a lot of fun making it. So let's continue going here. You're worth more now, so if you have people depending on you, that cash flow can cause issues if stopped. So you can do things with insurance, for example, like disability insurance, where it replaces part of your income if you can't work, or life insurance, which ensures dependents or a spouse can stay stable if something happens to you. So I'm 32 years old, and my dad's actually an insurance agent, and he has been almost kind of hounding me to do this already. And I think it's probably the time that I start doing it, especially since I'm planning on probably starting a family within the next 3 years. I think now will be a very good time for me to start, getting these things, because one thing about insurance that I'm not really too familiar with, despite my dad being an insurance agent. Sorry, Dad, I wish I knew more about this, but there's a whole thing with pre-existing conditions. Like sometimes if you don't get insurance before some major event, you won't get all the benefits of it or all the features. It's like you have to buy it before you even plan on having it, which I guess that's how insurance works. So maybe it's about time that I maybe for myself start looking into the disability and life insurance. And I think just the other day I was looking at, for example, like how much does life insurance cost? Let's say I was looking at, so average monthly cost for a 500,000 20-year policy, healthy 30-year-old, approximately 26 for men and 23 for women. Like that doesn't sound too crazy. This is average monthly cost for $500,000 life insurance, term life insurance. So I mean, I'm sure the more you get, the more expensive it will be, but I feel like for $26 for men, it's really not too bad. And then we have things like, I guess, whole life insurance provides lifetime coverage, a cash value component, provides lifetime coverage and includes a cash value component Average monthly cost for a $500,000 policy, approximately $450 per month. So I need to see really what each one of these things means, the whole life insurance and term life insurance. But this channel is not about insurance. It's just more so letting you know that people in this income bracket, these are the types of things that they're thinking about, and things that if you are in this income bracket, you might be best served by looking into something like this. So contact your local insurance company, see what type of quotes you can get, learn more about it, and I don't know if you really want me to talk more about these things. Who knows? Maybe I'll have my dad on the podcast one day. So, Dad, if you're listening, you might be a guest on the show. The inquisitive finance. So let's keep going here because we're about halfway through here. So the next things, you own things worth protecting, right? You own things now like a home, car, investments, or rental properties. After I paid off my student loans, I was about like 28 years old. The next thing I wanted to do was get a car because I had a 2007 Nissan Sentra and I drove it for about 11 years. Best car I ever had, but I really took it to the ground. And I decided to get my current Honda Civic that I got in 2017 on the day that it just kind of I was like making a left on an intersection and it just for all intents and purposes just like stopped in the middle. And I was like, I need a new car. So I initially leased it, which in hindsight I kind of regret doing that. I wish I would have just financed it, or even better yet, figured out a way to just pay for it cash. But after a couple years of listening of leasing the car, I just decided to do the lump sum payment. So you can imagine now that you're older, if you're in this income bracket, you might start buying these things, right? You might have a car now. You might have something like a home. You have your investments in your rental properties. So you want to, again, look into these types of insurances like homeowners or renters insurance or umbrella coverage to even go beyond the limits of whatever homeowners and renters insurance can give you. Umbrella insurance is not something that I really knew too much about, and I'm willing to bet a lot of you might not know about it either. Apologies if I'm wrong here, but I just feel like a lot of times we just, think about our money, we just invest it, and that's really all there is to it. But there's so many little things that we can do to protect our money and grow our money. And that's something that I hope my learnings I can give to all you. We can learn together and get more and get smarter, right? That's the whole point of the channel. So umbrella coverage, let me look up here what that means. So umbrella coverage. Let's go here. So umbrella coverage, or personal umbrella policy, provides an additional layer of liability protection that goes beyond the limits of your standard homeowners or auto insurance policies. It helps cover claims for bodily injury or property damage that exceed your existing policy limits and provide coverage for certain lawsuits, such as those involving slander, libel, sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce that, or defamation. Policies typically start at $1 million in coverage and can protect your personal assets from significant lawsuits. So you can imagine the more money you make, probably I'm willing to bet here that the more money you make, the odds are maybe there's a correlation between net worth and the percentage of lawsuits you can be involved in. I'm not entirely sure, but I think all in all, people that are making a lot of money want to figure out a way to protect their money, and doing things like opting in for umbrella coverage can probably help you do that. So just something really important to pay attention to. Something that I certainly didn't know about that I might start learning more about now and maybe even employing myself. And if I do, you'll know about it. Okay, going back here. So now you start thinking about things like you start thinking about future you, right? Retirement, career growth, and maybe kids. These are the types of things you start thinking in this income bracket. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're in this income bracket, you want to have kids. I think in today's day and age, especially with the technology we have, like this phone, for example, social media, you have kids from all different age groups. You have teenagers, you have young adults in their 20s, you have people like myself in their 30s, and even older. I just saw an article today of this person that was 80 years old that became monetized on YouTube. I mean, now just because you fall in a certain income bracket doesn't mean you need to do the thing. So it's like a 15-year-old making $150,000 on TikTok is not thinking about having kids, right? I just think statistically, and maybe up until this point, it has historically been this way where people in this income bracket are in their 30s and 40s and thinking about these types of things. So how can you position your money so that you can continue growing your money, but also protecting your assets, not only for yourself, but for your loved ones, and hopefully leave a legacy that they can continue building off of, right? Now we're going to switch into the money priorities, one of my favorite things. We talked about the responsibilities. You have, with great power comes great responsibility. With great income comes great responsibility. Now let's switch into priorities. The first thing here, you want to max out your employer match and consider a Roth versus a traditional 401k. When I first started in my career when I was 24, that was 8 years ago, I went exactly right up onto the employer match, and I didn't increase by a percentage every single year like I should have. But that's a topic for another video. But if you're watching this and you haven't, make sure you are increasing that 401k. But in that first income bracket we talked about, right? Early career, I encourage you all to at least get to the match that your company offers if they have one. After this, when you get to a point where you're in the 60 to 120, right, mid-career slash career growth, I want you to start thinking about how you can optimize and get to that, let's say 401k match, not 401k match, the 401k limit for the year. So that 23,500. So I did do a quick search on this yesterday, but let's see. How much would someone making 100k need to contribute to a 401k to max it out? Well, that is crazy. Let me show you this screen right here. This whole thing right here, we need to contribute 23,000 times to max out their 401k in 2025. Yeah, this is a flat dollar amount regardless of their salary, though they would need to contribute, bada bing, bada boom, 44% of their pre-tax income to contribute the max amount of 23,500 in 2025. If they're 50 or older, they can contribute. Yeah, this is weird. Something weird happened here. I'm gonna say in Florida, because I know Florida has some different tax implications. So let's see what it has to say about Florida. Okay, regardless of location. Okay, so I guess really location doesn't matter as a contribution limit is set by the IRS. If they are 50 or older, I feel like something weird happened here. To meet the 23, a person making 100,000 will need to contribute, okay, 23.5% of their salary. Okay, which obviously that makes sense, but we're not also considering match here. So yeah, I would like to see the exact percentage you would have to contribute in every single paycheck to be able to get to that limit. But the point I'm trying to make here is if you have an employer match, get at least the match and then do the math for yourself and see how much more would I need to contribute just to be able to get the max for the year, if you can, right? This is a very fine line you have to figure out for yourself because if you contribute too much that your life the quality of life diminishes too much because you're giving too much to investments. I don't think that's the right route to go down, but you might be best served by maybe increasing 2 points, let's say up to 8%, maybe 3 points to 9%, so on and so forth. What's going to happen after you max out for the year, unless you max out right at the last paycheck of the year, like December 31st, let's say you max out in like October, you will start getting a refund. And I remember this happened to me because once I started maxing out my 401k, which I think the first time for me was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, was the first time I ever maxed it out. I remember a paycheck of mine, I suddenly got more money, and I remember thinking, like, did I just get a promotion? Like, what happened? And one of my, actually, a project manager that I work with, he mentioned, oh, yeah, you probably already reached the limit, and now you're just getting this refund. You're getting the money that you would have contributed back. So it's kind of a nice, it's a really nice goal to hit because it's like you hit the max, now you're getting money back, and you can use that money to either do whatever, you can do whatever you want with that money. I would encourage you to, like it says here, consider a Roth versus a traditional 401k. You might want to consider going right and maxing out your Roth IRA, right? That's $7,000 for the year, which I think next year is going to be 7,500. You might consider contributing to a traditional 401k. It really depends on your current tax bracket now and where you expect for your tax bracket to be at the moment you retire. The next money priority here is increase investment allocation, your brokerage, your HSA, your Roth IRA. I just talked about this, but it's very important every year or maybe every couple of months as you get raises, as you get bonuses. Think about how you can make that money work for you. I can't tell you the amount of times I see people that get a nice lump sum bonus and they immediately drop it on something that's just not, there's just no return on investment. Like, I really don't think that if you just get a bonus, if you're making so much money and you get a bonus and you already have all your investments covered, which we'll get to in later income brackets, sure, maybe you can treat yourself and buy yourself a nice car. But if you're young, you got time on your side, just keep the cheap car. Take a cheaper vacation. You can have a lot of fun if you plan a vacation the right way and invest the money, right? Increase the investment allocation. Anytime you get a raise, like what I do is, let's say you get a raise of $1,000 for the year. Literally, what I do is I'll just divide 1,000 by 12. So let's just do that math real quick here. So I would take 1,000 divided by 12, right? So that's $83. I would go into my Fidelity app and I would increase my current automated contribution by $83 every single paycheck, right? So I would divide this by two, right? So it just take 83. That'd be like $40, right? 41.50 or something like this. 41.50. Just divide that, or that's what I would do every single 2 weeks. I would just continue adding that automated contributions. Every single time I get a raise, do the same math again and contribute that new amount into my Fidelity accounts. That's exactly what I would encourage you to do. Increase those investment allocations because you're making more money now and you're likely still very young and that money can work very, very hard for you if you do it the right way. Establish sinking funds. So something I just learned about, I didn't really know about this, but aside from an emergency fund, You're always encouraged to have your emergency fund. We talked yesterday about getting it to at least $1,000, and after that, seeing if you can get to like 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 12 months, depending on your risk tolerance. But something else that you can do is sinking funds, where you have different funds for specific things like a vacation, a car replacement, a home repair. That way, it doesn't need to come out of your emergency fund, right? You really want your emergency fund to be dedicated to true emergencies, which I think typically would probably fall under the health category, or like let's say primitive needs, things you need like housing, health, food. If you can't do any of those things, emergency fund. But other than that, if you want to go on vacation to Italy, you want to go on vacation to Universal Studios, you want to go on domestic, international, whatever it is, you can have a sinking fund specifically for this. Frankly, I have not thought about this, and it's not something that I do myself, but probably learning about it now and reading about it, it's something that I will probably sit down with my wife and say, hey, we should do this, because at least now we have a budget for these specific things, and when it comes down time to take money out, we don't have to worry if we have the money. We'll know it's there, and it won't touch any of our other goals that we have: investment goals, saving goals, housing goals, so on and so forth. So I think it's just a cool way to budget and keep money very focused. And the more focused you are, the easier it is for you to, let's say, accomplish the goals you want to do with your money. Okay, expand your emergency fund. So yesterday we talked about the 1,000. I just said the 136 12-month emergency fund. You might want to increase that emergency fund to do things like covering dependents or other things like higher fixed costs, right? You're upgrading your life now. I'm not talking about lifestyle creep, but odds are you're making more money. Again, you might have a mortgage, you might have kids, you might start doing more things that you didn't do before. I'm not necessarily saying it's lifestyle creep, but it's almost expected there'll be a little bit. You just want to keep it under control, make sure that you're expanding your emergency fund to take care again of the primitive needs, the things that you really, really, really need to get by, that without it, it will be a dire emergency. So these are other money priorities I want you to think about. And finally, things like upgrading insurance. So we talked about that disability insurance. We talked about that life insurance. Again, life, disability, renters, homeowners insurance, whether you're renting a home, you are renting out a home, right? Or you live in a home. Make sure that you're looking at the different coverages you have at your home. Frankly, I haven't looked at my coverage for my home since I first bought it almost 5 years ago. So for all I know, with the income bracket that I'm in, I should be looking at different coverage for the different pieces of that insurance, because if something happens, I do live in South Florida and we do get some nasty hurricanes. If something happens, how do I know that I'm not covered for exactly what I need to be covered for? Just saying, the more you get into these income brackets. You can see yesterday we were very focused on the financial foundations, right? Just covering rent, transportation, food. Now we have a little bit more money, so it's like, okay, I have that covered. What else can I do to protect myself, to make sure I can continue growing but protect my assets? So I'm thinking about things like insurance. What things do I own? My car, my house. I don't want anything to happen to these things. So I'm going to invest in some insurance. Okay, so finally, the saving style. We're now moving from a reactive type of saving to I'll save what I have left to something like a proactive savings, right? I'll save first and then I'll spend. So now you move from that thing where it's like, okay, this is just the money I have left, so I'm just going to save that because this is what I have left. And now it's like, well, I know what I'm going to have left, but I'm deliberately choosing to start putting it into different things, right? Again, just to reiterate, maybe I'm going to put some into an emergency fund. Maybe I'm going to put some into a sinking fund. Maybe I'm going to put some into insurance, so on and so forth. You have all these new types of different accounts that you can start putting your money into, and depending on how you allocate this, you can make your money start working harder for you. I would say at this point of your career, in your mid-career to career growth, I would aim to have 20 to 25% saved across all your different accounts. This is a good percentage of savings. So if you're making $100,000 a year, I want you to look into saving 20 to 25,000 gross income, right? This is before taxes. So that can be in investments. I used to think this meant only from savings, like what I have strictly in like an emergency fund, but it can come from things like your 401k, your Roth IRA, your HSA, your emergency fund. As long as you have $20,000 or $25,000 across all these different accounts, I would say you're very much on the right track. So all this being said, we have the income bracket for $60,000 to $120,000 mid-career slash career growth. This is where we saw 27% of people about fall in the range. So let me know in the comments, are you currently in this range? Are you maybe in the bracket below? Are you maybe in the bracket above? Have you learned something new? Are you ready to maybe start employing some of these new tactics in your own life? Just let me know, and I'm hoping to start a conversation with you all. So again, this was Rafael Negron from Inquisitive Finance. If you've been watching my videos for a long time, you've noticed that I once again changed my name. And why is that? Well, because the car videos are difficult to scale, okay? The car videos I have to do before work, and frankly, they were eating a little bit into my workday. I was getting too focused on the editing, so I would spend time during work doing the editing, which wasn't good. And so I thought I would just do it here at home a little bit more comfortable using a better camera, at least the rear facing camera of the iPhone, and using this cool sort of OBS setup where I'm able to do the thing where I can show you the screen, I can talk and add more context. So changing again, still keeping the finance niche, but at least with something like Inquisitive Finance, I'm not just, let's say, I don't have to stay in the car. I can do it in other places, which I think I don't want to have, finance car guy if I was going to start shooting if I was going to start shooting videos here in my office. So with all that being said, hope this was a great informative video. Let me know if it was, and if you liked it, subscribe, like the content, let me know what else you want to see. And with all that being said, I will see you all tomorrow for the next income bracket. Take it easy.